The Shadow of Rome. Throughout history, some civilizations have left an indelible mark, shaping the course of humanity far beyond their time. The Roman Empire is one of these. Beginning as a small village in 753 BCE, Rome transformed over centuries into a dominant power that controlled the Mediterranean and much of Europe. Today, only ruins, broken walls, and shattered columns remain, yet the shadow of Rome still lingers in the modern world. Rome's path was not paved merely with stones. It was laid with laws, engineering marvels, military discipline, and cultural influence, uniting an entire civilization. From the majestic arches of the Colosseum to the lively debates in the Roman Forum, every corner reflected the depth and power of this empire. Rome proved that an empire could command not just through territory, but also through ideas, culture, and innovation. Yet, like every great power, Rome's history was filled with mysteries, secrets, and turmoil. In this documentary, we will explore the empire's journey from its legendary founding to its rise through its golden age, its hidden myths, its decline, and the legacy it left behind. Along this journey, you will walk the dusty roads paved with stone, march alongside trembling legionaries under the shadow of war, and wander from grand forums to secret catacombs. Rome's greatness was not only in its military conquests, but also in the lasting impact it had on humanity. Its laws, urban planning, engineering achievements, and cultural heritage laid the foundations of the modern world. Understanding Rome's history is not just about the past. It is about understanding the present and glimpsing the future. So get ready to turn the dusty pages of time and step into the shadow of Rome. The founding of Rome and its legends. Every empire begins with a story, and Rome's story is one of myth, legend, and destiny. According to Roman tradition, the city was founded in 753 BCE, but the tale of its origins stretches back to the gods themselves. The most famous legend tells of twin brothers Romulus and Remus, abandoned at birth and cast into the river Tiber. They were saved by a she-wolf who nursed them until a shepherd discovered them. This image, the wolf standing protectively over the twins, became one of Rome's most enduring symbols. As the legend continues, Romulus and Remus grew into strong leaders, destined to build a great city. But fate would turn brother against brother. In a dispute over where to establish their settlement, Romulus killed Remus and became the sole founder of Rome. From blood and betrayal, a city was born. Behind the myth, there is also history. Archaeological evidence suggests that in the 8th century BCE, small communities lived on the 7 hills of Rome, particularly the Palatine Hill. These were humble villages of wooden huts surrounded by forests and rivers. Over time, these settlements united, forming the early foundations of Rome. The first rulers of the city were kings. Tradition records 7 kings of Rome, each said to have contributed to the growth of the city. One built its first walls, another established its religious customs, and yet another created the first great public works. Though half legendary, these tales reflect the Roman belief that their city was destined for greatness from its very beginning. What made these stories so powerful was not just their content, but the way they were told. Romans believed their city was born of divine will and heroic struggle. To them, Rome was not an accident of history. It was chosen by the gods. The myth of Romulus and Remus symbolized a toughness, resilience, and sacrifice that would come to define Rome for centuries. From the simple huts on Palatine Hill to the grand marble forums of later centuries, Rome's journey began with a legend that still captures imaginations today. The story of two brothers, a wolf, and the birth of an empire. The Roman Republic and the Punic Wars. After the Age of Kings, Rome entered a new era, the Roman Republic. Founded in 509 BCE, after the overthrow of the last king, the Republic was built on a revolutionary idea that power should not rest in the hands of one ruler, but be shared among elected officials. At its heart stood the Senate, a gathering of Rome's elite statesmen, who debated laws, declared wars, and shaped the destiny of the city. The Republic was not a democracy as we understand it today. The wealthy patricians held most of the power, while the common people, the plebeians, fought for greater rights and representation. Over time, Rome developed a complex system of checks and balances. 2 consuls elected each year, magistrates for administration, and assemblies where citizens could vote. It was far from perfect, but this political experiment gave Rome both stability and flexibility, a system that would guide it for centuries. But Rome was never content with stability alone. Expansion was in its blood. Through alliances, wars, and treaties, Rome steadily grew from a city-state into a dominant power across Italy. By the 3rd century BCE, one rival stood in its way: Carthage, a wealthy North African city with a powerful navy. The struggle between Rome and Carthage erupted into a series of conflicts known as the Punic Wars, some of the most dramatic battles in ancient history. The First War, 264–241 BCE, was fought mainly at sea. Rome, with little naval experience, built a fleet from scratch and stunned the Carthaginians by inventing the corvus, a boarding bridge that turned sea battles into infantry combat. Against all odds, Rome won. But the Second War would bring Carthage's greatest general to the stage, Hannibal Barca. In 218 BCE, Hannibal performed one of the most daring military maneuvers in history, leading his army, complete with war elephants, across the snowy Alps to strike directly at the heart of Italy. His victories at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae shocked the world. At Cannae, Hannibal encircled and annihilated a Roman army twice the size of his own. For years, Hannibal roamed Italy, seemingly unstoppable. And yet, Rome endured. The Republic's strength lay not only in its armies, but in its resilience. After every defeat, Rome raised new legions. They refused to surrender. Eventually, the Roman general Scipio Africanus turned the tide, carrying the war to Africa and defeating Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. The third and final Punic War, 149–146 BCE, sealed Carthage's fate. After a brutal siege, the once great city was destroyed, its people sold into slavery, and its lands annexed by Rome. A legend claims that Roman senators salted the earth so nothing would grow there again, though this is likely myth. Still, the destruction of Carthage marked the rise of Rome as the uncontested master of the Western Mediterranean. The Punic Wars transformed Rome. Victorious abroad, the Republic grew richer, stronger, and more ambitious. But this new power also brought problems. Vast wealth pouring in, corruption spreading in the Senate, and social tensions boiling at home. Rome had won an empire, but at a cost. The Republic, once founded on unity and balance, was beginning to crack under the weight of its own success. And soon, these cracks would widen into chaos, civil war, and the rise of emperors. The rise of the empire, Caesar and Augustus. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome had become the dominant power of the Mediterranean. But victory brought new problems. Wealth poured in from conquered lands, slaves flooded the markets, and the gap between the rich and poor grew dangerously wide. Corruption spread through the Senate, while ambitious generals began to see themselves as more powerful than the Republic itself. The first cracks appeared with the Gracchus brothers, Tiberius and Gaius. As tribunes, they tried to pass reforms to help the poor by redistributing land. But the Senate resisted violently. Both brothers were assassinated. Their deaths set a grim precedent. Political disputes in Rome would now often be settled with blood. Meanwhile, Rome's armies were changing. Soldiers were no longer just citizens defending their homeland. They were professional troops loyal to their generals. This shift gave rise to men like Gaius Marius, who reformed the legions, and Lucius Cornelius Sulla, who marched his army on Rome itself. Civil war had arrived, and the Republic was entering a dangerous new era. Out of this chaos emerged one of history's most legendary figures, Julius Caesar. Brilliant, ambitious, and charismatic, Caesar built his reputation as a general during the conquest of Gaul, modern-day France. His campaigns not only expanded Rome's borders, but also showcased his genius for strategy and leadership. His famous phrase, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, captured his unstoppable rise. But power in Rome was never shared easily. Caesar formed a political alliance known as the First Triumvirate, alongside Pompey the Great and Crassus, one of Rome's richest men. For a time, this trio dominated Roman politics. Yet, as always, alliances in Rome were fragile. When Crassus died and relations between Caesar and Pompey soured, civil war erupted once more. In 49 BCE, Caesar made his fateful decision. He crossed the Rubicon River with his army, defying the Senate's orders. The die is cast, he declared. By doing so, Caesar ignited a civil war against Pompey and the Senate's forces. One by one, his enemies fell, and Caesar marched into Rome as its unrivaled leader. As dictator, Caesar launched sweeping reforms granting citizenship to more people, reforming the calendar, creating the basis of the Julian calendar we still use today, and reducing debts. Many hailed him as a hero, but others feared he aimed to make himself king. And in Rome, the very word king was poisonous. On the Ides of March 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated in the Senate by a group of senators, including his once trusted ally, Brutus. They believed they were saving the Republic. Instead, they plunged Rome into even greater chaos. Caesar's death set off another round of civil wars. From the struggle emerged his adopted heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus. Cunning and patient, Octavian formed a second triumvirate with Mark Antony and Lepidus, hunting down Caesar's assassins. But soon Octavian and Antony turned on each other. Their rivalry culminated in the naval battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra of Egypt. In 27 BCE, Octavian took the title Augustus, becoming the first Roman emperor. Officially, the Republic still existed, Senate meetings were held, laws were passed, but in truth, all power rested in Augustus' hands. The Republic had ended. Rome was now an empire. Under Augustus, Rome entered a golden age known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Roads, aqueducts, and monuments rose across the empire. Trade flourished, culture thrived, and Rome's power stretched from Spain to Syria, from Britain to North Africa. For centuries to come, emperors would rule in Augustus' shadow. But behind the marble and glory, the Republic's ideals were gone. Rome had traded freedom for stability, democracy for monarchy. The world's greatest empire had been born not with a vote, but with a sword. The glory of Rome, the Pax Romana. When Augustus took power in 27 BCE, the world held its breath. Would Rome collapse into more wars, or would this new ruler bring peace? Against all odds, Augustus did something extraordinary. He built stability after a century of chaos. This period became known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, and it would last for over 2 centuries. The Pax Romana was not a peace without wars. Rome still fought on its frontiers, but within the empire, life flourished as never before. Augustus reorganized the army, secured borders, and filled the provinces with governors loyal to him. He reformed taxation, encouraged trade, and invested in infrastructure. Roads stretched like veins across the empire. Aqueducts carried water into cities, and monumental buildings reshaped Rome into the marble capital of the world. The Colosseum, the Pantheon, and grand forums reflected not only Rome's power, but also its ambition to impress both citizens and foreigners alike. The phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," was no metaphor. It was a practical reality. From Spain to Syria, from Britain to Egypt, traders, soldiers, and messengers traveled along the empire's vast network of roads, making Rome the hub of an interconnected world. The population of Rome itself swelled to nearly 1 million people, the largest city on earth at the time. Its streets bustled with merchants selling goods from Africa and Asia, philosophers debating in forums, senators plotting in shadows, and citizens enjoying lavish public baths. For ordinary Romans, life was far from equal. Slaves labored while the elite feasted, but the empire offered opportunities for prosperity and advancement. Entertainment was central to Roman life. Gladiatorial games thrilled crowds in the Colosseum. Chariot races thundered around the Circus Maximus, and public festivals filled the calendar. For the emperors, these spectacles were more than fun. They were tools of control. By giving the people bread and circuses, rulers secured loyalty while keeping unrest at bay. Culturally, the Pax Romana sparked a golden age. Latin literature flourished under poets like Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid, linking Rome's destiny to the gods and heroes of old. Historians like Livy chronicled Rome's past, while Ovid spun tales of mythology. In architecture, Roman engineering astonished the world. Arches, domes, and concrete construction allowed for structures that seemed to defy time. Many still stand today. Religion, too, evolved. Traditional Roman gods continued to be worshipped, but Augustus encouraged the imperial cult, where emperors were honored almost as divine figures. Over time, however, new spiritual movements began to spread quietly through the empire. One of them, Christianity, would eventually challenge Rome's entire identity. But during the Pax Romana, this faith was still small and underground. The Pax Romana was also a time of strong rulers who secured the empire's greatness. Emperors like Trajan expanded Rome to its largest borders, stretching into Dacia, modern Romania, and Mesopotamia. His successor, Hadrian, built walls to protect Rome's frontiers, most famously Hadrian's Wall in Britain. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, embodied the ideal of a wise ruler, writing meditations on duty and virtue, even as he defended the empire against invading tribes. But beneath the glory, problems lingered. Rome relied heavily on slaves, and inequality remained vast. Corruption seeped into politics, and emperors varied from brilliant leaders to reckless tyrants. Still, for 2 centuries, the Pax Romana represented something rare in history: stability on a massive scale. For those living under Roman rule, it was an age of order and opportunity. For the world, it was the moment when Rome became more than a city or a state. It became a civilization, one that would shape law, language, architecture, and culture for millennia to come. As the Pax Romana shone brightly, no one could imagine how dark the shadows of decline would soon become. The crisis and decline of the empire. The Pax Romana had given Rome centuries of prosperity, but no empire lasts forever. By the 3rd century CE, the cracks in Rome's foundation were widening into gaping wounds. What had once seemed eternal now began to falter. The problems were many, and they struck all at once. Rome's borders had grown too vast to defend. Germanic tribes pressed in from the north, Persians threatened from the east, and unrest simmered in the provinces. To keep armies loyal, emperors spent fortunes, draining the treasury. Heavy taxes crushed ordinary citizens, while inflation made currency nearly worthless. At the same time, Rome's political system spiraled into chaos. Between 235 and 284 CE, the empire endured what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors rose and fell, most of them murdered or overthrown. Civil wars raged as generals fought each other for power. Stability, once Rome's pride, had vanished. The economy collapsed under the weight of corruption and mismanagement. Farms failed, trade declined, and famine struck in several regions. A devastating plague swept across the empire, killing thousands and further weakening the army. The once mighty legions, Rome's sword and shield, now struggled to defend against endless invasions. To restore order, some emperors tried bold reforms. Diocletian, who ruled from 284 CE, reorganized the empire, splitting it into an eastern and western half for easier control. He strengthened the military and attempted to fix the economy, but his reforms could not heal Rome's deeper wounds. By the 4th century, a new force was rising: Christianity. What had begun as a persecuted faith now spread rapidly across the empire. When Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity in the early 300s, and issued the Edict of Milan, the empire's identity shifted forever. Constantine even built a new capital, Constantinople, in the east, signaling the growing strength of the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Empire, however, was not so fortunate. It grew weaker with every passing decade. Corruption drained resources, and barbarian tribes grew bolder. In 378 CE, the Romans suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Adrianople, where Gothic cavalry annihilated a Roman army, killing Emperor Valens himself. It was a sign of things to come. By the 5th century, the Western Empire was a shadow of its former self. Cities decayed, roads crumbled, and the once great legions relied increasingly on mercenaries, many of them the same tribes threatening Rome's borders. The final blow came in 410 CE when the Visigoths under Alaric stormed Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City was sacked. Shock waves spread across the world. If Rome could fall, nothing was truly eternal. Yet Rome staggered on for a few more decades. The Vandals seized North Africa, the empire's breadbasket. The Huns, led by the fearsome Attila, ravaged Europe, forcing Rome to pay tribute for survival. Finally, in 476 CE, the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustus, was deposed by the Germanic general Odoacer. The Western Roman Empire was no more. But this was not the end of Rome's story. In the east, Byzantium, the Eastern Roman Empire, continued to flourish, preserving Roman laws, culture, and traditions for another 1,000 years. Still, the fall of the West marked the end of the ancient world's greatest power. The Roman Empire, once the master of the Mediterranean, had fallen victim to its own size, ambition, and corruption. It had conquered the known world only to collapse under the weight of its own greatness. And yet Rome never truly died. Its language, laws, architecture, and ideals lived on, shaping kingdoms, nations, and even modern governments. The empire may have crumbled, but its shadow still stretches across history. The legacy of Rome. The story of Rome begins as a small village on the banks of the Tiber River. By 509 BCE, the Romans overthrew their kings and founded the Republic, governed by the Senate and elected magistrates. Through alliances and wars, they expanded across Italy and then clashed with Carthage in the Punic Wars. Despite Hannibal's daring invasion, Rome triumphed, becoming the dominant Mediterranean power. But success bred conflict. Civil wars tore apart the Republic as generals like Julius Caesar rose to power. His assassination in 44 BCE unleashed further chaos, until his heir Octavian, later Augustus, emerged as Rome's first emperor. Under his rule began the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of stability, trade, engineering, and cultural brilliance. Roads, aqueducts, and monuments made Rome the hub of the ancient world. Yet cracks appeared. Economic troubles, invasions, and weak rulers destabilized the empire. In 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, though the East Byzantium survived for another 1,000 years. Though the empire fell, Rome's legacy lived on. Its laws shaped modern justice, its language became Europe's foundation, and its architecture inspired centuries. The emperors are gone, but Rome never truly died. The shadow of eternal Rome still remains.